Coming up, Rishi Sunak's ever so humble inaugural speech seemed to indicate the return of grown-up politics as he fessed up to Tory mistakes and promised to govern with accountability, integrity and professionalism. But within 5 hours, he announced the reappointment of the extreme right-wing culture warrior Suella Braverman as his Home Secretary, just 6 days after she left government for breaking the ministerial code. Jake Berry, Tory party chairperson until this point, wasn't very happy. He said Braverman was responsible for a really serious breach of national security after sending confidential information to a private email address, then sending it to a maverick MP in an attempt to undermine the Truss prime ministership, attempting then to email it to the MP's wife and accidentally sending it to a junior member of parliamentary staff who reported this flagrant breach of security. The UK's most senior civil servant, Simon Case, ruled that this broke the national security rules and the ministerial code. But Suella Braverman is not the only Tory MP to have committed flagrant breaches of the rules. There are nearly 200 of them that have either had to resign or apologise since the current government came into power in 2010. But in this video, in the light of Keir Starmer decisively sacking Labour MP Chris Matheson last week for sexual misconduct, I want to look specifically at just how commonplace sexual and other forms of assault is amongst members of the Parliamentary Conservative Party. Stay tuned. If you enjoy watching the Truth to Power channel, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help me out by hitting the like button and especially by sharing a link to this video on your social media platforms. When Labour MP Chris Matheson was found to have made unwanted and unwelcome sexual advances towards a junior member of staff, he was thrown out of the Labour Party by Keir Starmer immediately, even though this has triggered a by-election in the Labour seat of Chester. Compare and contrast Starmer's approach with that taken by the last 3 leaders of the Parliamentary Conservative Party. Let's take a look at the multitude of Tory sexual offenders, bullies and those guilty of common assault, many of them still holding office.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
First up, there's an unnamed Tory MP in his 50s who was arrested back in May on suspicion of indecent assault, sexual assault, rape, abuse of position of trust and misconduct in public office. Since that time, he's had his bail extended several times by the police, but has been banned from attending Parliament by the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. Labour called on the Conservatives to suspend this man from the parliamentary party, meaning that his identity would then become public. But the Tories refused to suspend him, so to this day, his identity remains a secret, or is at least not being reported in the media. A stark contrast to Labour's approach in the recent case of Chris Matheson. Labour MP Jess Phillips said, "If I was a constituent in this MP's constituency, I might feel I had a right to know, because there's nothing that can stop him seeing his constituents completely in private, completely on his own." Yet another tale of sexual misconduct by a sitting Tory MP. Imran Ahmed Khan was MP for Wakefield until he was found guilty of the sexual assault of a 15-year-old boy and sentenced to 18 months in prison. He was only expelled from the party after his conviction and continued to sit as an independent MP for a while, only resigning once he had qualified for his next monthly salary payment. Tory through and through. Then there's Rob Roberts, MP for Delyn, who was suspended from the party for 12 weeks in June 2020 after an independent report found he had made repeated and unwanted sexual advances towards a member of his staff, breaching Parliament's sexual misconduct policy. He was allowed to return as a member of the Conservative Party in October 2021 and still sits to this day as an independent MP. David Warburton, Tory MP for Somerton and Frome, is suspended from the party after a series of allegations from 3 different women relating to sexual harassment and cocaine use. The investigation is still ongoing, but is nearing its conclusions as I record this video. Andrew Griffiths was the MP for Burton and a Conservative minister. In 2018, it was found that he had sent over 2,000 sexually explicit text messages to 2 of his female constituents. it was concluded by Judge Williscroft that Griffiths had pressured his wife Kate, also a Conservative MP, into engaging in sexual activity and used coercive and controlling behaviour. Neil Parish was the tractor porn MP for Tiverton and Honiton, who was forced to resign after twice watching dominatrix porn while in the House of Commons, in full view of male and female colleagues. This triggered the by-election thumping by the Lib Dems that may have been the beginning of the end for the Johnson premiership. Connor Burns, MP for Bournemouth West, was fired from his ministerial role last month after he was found to have touched a man's thigh without permission at the Tory conference. Stephen Crabb, Tory MP for Preseli, Pembrokeshire, was found in 2017 to have sent unwanted sexually explicit text messages to a female candidate he had interviewed for a job in his own office, forcing him to resign his position in the Department for Work and Pensions. There had been earlier allegations of him sending suggestive text messages, with the Conservative Party investigating panel determining that his behaviour had been inappropriate but did not constitute harassment. Next up is another Tory MP who has managed to remain anonymous, but he's accused of drugging and assaulting fellow MPs, including allegations of licking the nipples of a fellow Tory MP that he had drugged up. The unnamed MP has not been suspended by the party, while detectives from the Central Specialist Crime Unit continue their probe. Then there's Mark Menzies, MP for Fylde in Lancashire. In 2014, he had to resign as a parliamentary private secretary after allegations surfaced that he paid a Brazilian male escort for sex and drugs. Mark Garnier, MP for Wyre Forest. He referred to his secretary as sugar tits and sent her out to buy sex toys. He was fired as a minister in a reshuffle in 2018, but remains as a sitting Tory MP to this day. James Grundy, Tory MP for Lee. In February 2020, a video recording obtained by LBC showed Grundy publicly exposing his genitals in front of a woman at an event in the Ram's Head Inn, Loughton, in 2007. Rami Ranger, this is a Tory life peer who was caught up in the Cash for Honours scheme and later found guilty by an employment tribunal of victimising and harassing a female employee after she had raised a sexual harassment complaint against another member of staff. Nigel Evans, MP for Ribble Valley. He was acquitted of rape in the court, but during the trial it came to light that he had sexually assaulted several men, groping them without permission. Damien Green, Tory MP for Ashford, who was forced to resign his cabinet position in 2017 after he was investigated for sexually harassing a woman and watching pornography on his work computer. He was found to have broken the ministerial code. Daniel Kaczynski, the particularly toxic culture warrior and MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham, found to have bullied parliamentary staff and made to issue an apology in the House of Commons. In 2017, he was referred to the Tory Disciplinary Commission under the Westminster sex scandal for sexual misconduct. And now, criminality, sexual misconduct and conspiring to pervert the course of justice all wrapped up in one case. Charlie Elphick, Tory MP for Dover, was found guilty in 2020 of 3 counts of sexual assault and sentenced to prison for 2 years. He was replaced as MP for Dover by his wife, Natalie Elphick, who was subsequently suspended for 1 day after she was found to have attempted to influence the outcome of her husband's sexual assault case. Theresa Villiers, ex-minister and MP for Chipping Barnet, was also suspended for 1 day after she was found to have tried to influence the outcome of the same sexual assault case, as was Roger Gale, MP for North Thanet, Adam Holloway, MP for Gravesham and Lord Commissioner of the Treasury, and Bob Stewart, MP for Beckenham. All were forced to apologise. These conspiracists still sit in Parliament with the Tory whip representing hundreds of thousands of the electorate. I find that absolutely shameful. In August 2020, an unnamed Tory MP and ex-minister was arrested on suspicion of rape, but has to date never been charged. The woman he assaulted on the parliamentary estate alleges that the MP forced her to have sex and left her so traumatised that she had to go to hospital for treatment. And how can we forget Chris Pincher? MP for Tamworth, who resigned as Government Deputy Chief Whip after reports emerged he had groped 2 men at a private club. He'd previously resigned for unwanted sexual advances against the Tory activist. He still sits as an independent MP to this day, having had the whip removed by the Tories. Of course, it was his promotion by Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson, even though Johnson knew that Pincher was a serial sex offender, that actually led to the former Prime Minister resigning in disgrace, being the straw that broke the camel's back after a multitude of scandals, including Johnson breaking the law when he attended a party at Downing Street during lockdown, alongside regular breaches of the ministerial code during his premiership. And while we're still on sexual offences and also touching on lockdown laws, perhaps an honorary mention at this point to ex-minister Matt Hancock, MP for West Suffolk, who broke social distancing rules and had to resign after being caught on CCTV camera, some say deliberately, snogging his aide and mistress in his ministerial office. There have been other assaults carried out by Tory MPs that were of a non-sexual nature, at least they would appear to be. For example, this is Mark Field, Liz Truss's former lover, in 2019, assaulting a female protester by grabbing her by the neck. Then there's Alan Cairns. He had to step down as Secretary of State for Wales after he was found to have lied about knowing of the former aide's attempts to sabotage a rape trial. And staying in Wales, Jamie Wallace, MP for Bridgend, who crashed his Mercedes and fled the scene. In July this year, he was found guilty of failing to stop after an accident, failing to report an accident, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position. He was disqualified from driving for 6 months and fined £2,500 after using the excuse that because he was wearing women's clothes, he was frightened that a group of local people who had come to help him were going to assault, kidnap, or kill him. And turning to cyber assault, there's the populist culture warrior on the far right of the Tory party, Kemi Badenoch. In 2018, a video surfaced where she admitted to hacking into the website of Labour MP Harriet Harman. This matter was referred to Action Fraud. And of course, there are literally dozens of examples I could give you of Tory bullying short of assault. 30p Lee Anderson and others pushing protesters, and dozens of examples of Tory misconduct relating to financial affairs, expenses claims and corrupt contracts for donors and cronies. But that will all have to wait for a future video.